We all know that women is the most vulnerable segment of society, and if we talk about trafficking, so we all know that women and children are the most vulnerable segment. But what are the factors that make them vulnerable?
Thank you. We all know that the women are the largest percentage of victims of human trafficking in persons. They constitute about 80% of the victims, and 60% are from the Asian region. But when we are talking about the women victims, we also have to keep in mind the factors that impact on women's livelihood and make them the victim. Firstly, the lack of opportunity, gender parity, lack of education, discriminatory laws, and discriminatory processes, injustices in the society, lack of women empowerment, lack of opportunities to earn, poverty. So these are gender risks that impact and push the women towards different areas which make them vulnerable and they become the victim. But I think mainly I would like to talk about the leadership role, the role of the women leadership. Women constitute about 50% of the global population, and they play a critical role in addressing the socio-economic and humanitarian issues. So without involving women, we cannot address the issues and we cannot address the menace and the ills like human trafficking in persons. We have seen that where in the national legislators, where the number of women is more, they are likely to pass the laws which are human-friendly, like against harassment, against rape, against the victimization and violence. So the more we give opportunity to the women, more we involve them in the legislative and the decision-making processes, more we see that exactly these issues are addressed. Luckily, I belong to the party of Shahid Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto, who is like my mentor, the first female Prime Minister of Pakistan, twice elected, and also the first female Prime Minister of the Muslim world. She did a lot. She championed the human rights like, reforms. She not only struggled for the democracy, but also made many achievements which are like today we can celebrate those, like focusing more on education, providing more opportunities for women empowerment, introducing women justices to the higher judiciary, opening women police stations, and creating opportunities for women empowerment. So only I believe that the presence of women in the legislative assemblies can make us sensitive about these issues and also bring the solutions and the legislations which are friendly and which can address the welfare of human beings. So I would also like here to take an opportunity to apprise the participants in the audience that myself, I was the member of the Senate who introduced the Child Marriage Restraint Act in the Senate of Pakistan in 2017. Although we faced like lot of opposition, but still, alhamdulillah, it was carried forward by Senator Sehar Kamran and was passed in 2019 by the Senate of Pakistan, but is still pending in the National Assembly. The second most important law, which I believe the women can do most, is creating awareness about these issues and sensitizing the society, was the Civic Education Act. Luckily, this law was passed by both the houses of the parliament and today is an act and would be likely to be implemented on 23rd March this year while we are celebrating or we are observing the golden jubilee of the Constitution. So this law makes it compulsory for the students and the masses to be taught about our Constitution, the rights and the obligations, as well as our civic responsibilities. When we are sensitive about and we are sensitized about our civic responsibilities, we are sensitized about our Constitution, our rights and obligations, then we are like, we have more awareness about the crimes happening around us. So I believe that the implementation of law would be a great step. And as we all know that there is no doubt that the informed societies are more are more in a position to stop such crimes, and address such ills and the menace of human trafficking. Because people, they know, they remain vigilant, they know what's happening around them, they know the causes, and it also, like, you know, the right of education and the other right that our Constitution guarantees. When the citizens know about that, then they can voice for their rights also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So basically, we need to aware of women. We need to educate them, because trafficking is something that is happening around us and we don't know. So now I would like to request Ms. Suhai Aziz to talk about the different forms of trafficking, and that's happening around us, and we still don't know that, yes, this is happening and we have to report it.
Thank you, Manur. First of all, I would like to appreciate this effort by SSDO that you have included this topic in today's session, that the role of women leadership in combating trafficking. So first of all, I would like to shed some light on this topic, and then I'll answer your question. Role of women is indispensable in all the professions. Wherever they go, wherever, whatever profession is there, the women leadership plays a vital role. And so it is in combating trafficking in person. Whether women are at the policy making level, whether women are in the law enforcement agencies, or women are at any tier of criminal justice system. When it comes to trafficking in person, if there's a woman who is looking after the case, making law, making policy, looking after the rehabilitation process, when a woman is there, there are ample chances that the victim of trafficking, most of the times that's either a child, a woman, a transgender, a person from minority, or a disabled person. If a woman is there, she has this sense of empathy, sympathy, civility, and niceties. So she is in a better position to address the issue. So women leadership has great potential. And when it comes to trafficking in person, women, when compared to men, I won't say that men don't have nicety, civility, and empathy, but most of the times, a woman has more potential to be compassionate and passionate about the victim, her or his well-being, and she may also have a better understanding of the mental health of the person who is victim, and she may also has a vision about a victim of trafficking in person. If the victim is female or a child or transgender or a person from minority or a disabled person, a women officer, if she's dealing with that victim, she has this vision. She will think about future of the victim in a different way than a man. A man might think to solving that problem then and there, but a woman will think that the victim has a child, what will she do with the child? She is a married woman, or different things, the different scenarios. A women officer or a women in rehabilitation center, a woman has better understanding about mental health, mental well-being, about other issues of victims. The potential victims of trafficking are, of course, women and children. You asked me about the types of trafficking. Okay, so the types of there are different types of trafficking. We police officers, we deal with trafficking in person within the geographical boundaries of the country. So I would like to tell you some statistics first. Sindh Police, the department that I belong to, Sindh Police has registered 488 cases of trafficking in person from March 2022 to December 2022. That includes 399 cases of sex trafficking and 79 cases of forced labor. And I feel proud to tell you that Sindh Police has handed over 550 victims of trafficking in person to their guardians or their parents. And since trafficking in person, since the law has passed, all the police departments, all the law enforcement agencies, along with our policymakers and along with our civil society and the members of different non-governmental organizations, they have emphasized on this particular topic, and awareness has increased. The police constable who earlier had no knowledge about trafficking in person is now aware. He knows that trafficking in person is a crime. And if a person who has been taken to another place by some manipulator, they know how to rescue that person, to take him to police station, although the methods are still, I would say, primitive. This is a very bitter fact that we are overly legislated society. So many laws are there, but it's very difficult to get the knowledge of that law to every member of law enforcement agency. So it's a bitter truth that they don't know what the actual section of TIP Act applies on a particular situation, but they do know that if a victim is there, they are supposed to rescue him or her, and they do rescue it. The forms of trafficking in person, that includes forced beggary, that includes forced prostitution, that includes taking people from countryside, from villages to big stations, and just to deceive them, to tell them that they are going to do something else in the big city, but when they reach there, they are put into the forced labor. And you know, this trafficking in person is not limited to the crimes or the acts mentioned, but any new scenario where a person's will is coerced, a person is put under undue influence, and he is asked to do something that he is not willing to do, that includes in exploitation of that person. And any unexplained exploitation of a person comes in the domain of trafficking in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Suhai, for shedding light over the forms of trafficking in persons. So we are so glad to know that there is a lot of improvement in our departments. Since you have mentioned it very rightly, that women and children are the most vulnerable sector, so we can relate to the problems of each other in terms of trafficking as well. So for combating trafficking, it's always a public-private partnership. So we are having Ms. Uzma Noorani here with us. I would like to request you to talk about the improvements, to talk about the achievements of government and civil society in combating trafficking in persons.
Before I move to the question that you've asked, I would like to mention that since we are here to discuss the role of women in leadership, so I believe that we have to all understand that women have the right to life, liberty, and dignity, and that they have the right to movement and security, thus ensuring that the right to be part of every sphere of their lives. So that is very important when we want to see women like police, in the police force, in the parliament, and in every sphere of life. Women should be more visible. Unfortunately, in a country like ours, where there's lawlessness and lack of education, poor governance, lack of awareness, and all these other factors, these become breeding grounds for modern day slavery, like bonded labor and servitude and coercion and exploitation of women and children, and that they are used in bondage and other forms of subversion. We see, like, around us, we see child domestic workers working in, I think, most homes, and we don't even consider this, that this is also like a part of trafficking, in sense that they are put there without their will. Either they have been sold to a family by their parents due to poverty. And we see, it has been mentioned this morning also about beggary and all that. And because we are so used to seeing these different forms of slavery that we don't we have become immune to them. And I think it's time to wake up and realize that this is trafficking. It's a very grave crime, and that we all need to take notice of it. And unfortunately, what I've seen is that religious groups promote such things also, as we see in the, like in a few years ago, there were Christian girls being sold off in marriage to Chinese men, you know, and there were religious groups and who were involved in that. Then we have religious groups who are very active in conversion of Hindu girls and other minority girls, and they are in fact patronized. They are given tickets to run in parliament. They are given, they are called to discuss a discussion on forced marriages. They are called as to give a talk over there. So we are just enabling them and giving them importance, and thus they go on doing things that are a grave human rights violation. What about the recent incident in Balochistan? We found out that a sitting prime minister was part of keeping a whole family in bondage and servitude. So what happens? I mean, these incidents come forward, but I wonder if the police in Balochistan will really follow up on this and punish him under those acts. And so, like you asked me, the question was about how we can... Actually, her question refers to my role as I'm also one of the founder members, trustee of a shelter home called Panha in Karachi, and this is a public-private partnership. So over there, like, obviously we do get girls, and some of them are victims of trafficking, and we identify them. But again, what I noticed is that girls come to the shelter, they are left there by the police, but in most cases, I don't see the police booking them under the trafficking. What happens to the accused? Usually we hear that it's a kidnapping case, the police has recovered them, or they have somehow escaped the abusers, and they have made their way to the police station, and then they're left at the shelter. And the shelter can only play a very small role, as we can sort of, maybe some of them want to be reunited with their family. So we have to make that effort. It should be coming from the police and the courts, not left to a shelter to manage this, but we do try to do that. And recently we had a girl who had, she had been sold off, kidnapped and sold off, and we helped trace her family and we sent her back. But then there are victims who have been suffering long lengths of confinement, and they have been exposed to prostitution and different forms of sexual acts. And when these girls come, they are very badly abused and bruised mentally and emotionally and physically. So they need long-term therapy. And this is where I feel we have been talking since morning about the need for shelters for women, particularly trafficked women and girls and children. So shelters like ours can only fulfill a small, it can be a stopgap solution for we can keep them for a few months. But then these victims need long-term rehabilitation. Sometimes they don't even know where they have come from. They can't reach their family, so they're alone in this world, basically. So we need some long-term rehabilitation centers where these girls can be educated, groomed, trained, to be able to cope with their lives. It means staying there, maybe if they're children, till they are adults, and some kind of rehabilitation services where they can be maybe placed in jobs or something like that. That's how you can help victims of trafficking. So I think it fulfills your...
Yeah, so thank you so much. But we need to go beyond the shelters, but unfortunately even shelters are not there for the victims. So I would ask this from you and from the other panelists as well. So what is the mechanism you think for the protection of victims of trafficking? Because it would take a whole plan and management. We should not rely on the shelters only, but even shelters are not there for them. So what do you think about that? Yeah, please, you can.
I think we first need to address the issues that prevent the victim to come and complain or to launch her complaint, because there are different issues and fear, like stigmatization in the society, fear sometimes the traffickers are the near ones, maybe sometimes the legal husband, or sometimes the family members. And then also the social taboos. We have to see that exactly the treatment. Our social norms norms are so strict that the girl or the woman who would come for complaint would feel insecure. And then exactly, I think that's another issue, which is the confidentiality. So this is also one of the concern that the women victims, they fear, they don't go, they don't reach, and they don't complain. And they keep it to, and they hold, or either they continue to be the victim, or even if they get released, they are not reporting it. So that's why I would say that the figures those have been quoted here are the only figures which have been reported. Like since morning, I have been attending this conference, and I would also like to appreciate this SDDO for arranging this conference on such an important subject, especially Kausar for inviting me here, because I would say that we see these happening around us, but we are not sensitive. We are not vigilant towards what's happening in our society, and we ignore it. But now, after attending this conference, there are so many victims which I am recalling that we see on the daily basis, but we just ignore them. Or the maximum thing is that we provide them a short-term shelter. Short-term shelter will not address the issue. We need to make sure that there is a protection. Sometimes we have witnessed that if the victim comes back to the family would either kill her in the name of honor, or she has been just stigmatized. So state has to ensure the protection of those victims. State has to ensure that the reporting procedure is very safe. And state has to address all those factors which hold the victim from complaining.
Very rightly, you have mentioned that we only quote the figure that is reported, and unfortunately, marriage is a very, very common way of human trafficking, and we always think that your daughter is getting married to someone.
Let me add that the Child Marriage Restraint Act should be very strictly implemented, because that's also abuse of the young girls. They are denied of their right of education. Their health is being compromised. And they are used as a child labor, and when they have been given the responsibility which they are not prepared for. And so there are many factors until and unless we are reluctant to identify the social ills, and we are reluctant to take the responsibility and protect our girls, we cannot bring a change in the society.
And these issues are not only confined to the rural areas, they are very much common in the urban areas as well. We are very much confident whenever our daughter is getting married to someone who is living abroad, and we don't do the investigation. So it is very important to talk about that as well. So I'll ask you about the shelters. I'll ask you, Ms. Uzma, to talk about the shelters that are provided to the women victim, not for the trafficking. Generally for the women victim, are they enough for them? Do you have any data reported on it?
Well, there are the Darul Amans that exist, that are government-run shelters. So there are shelters operating all over Pakistan. In Punjab, I think we have a large number of Darul Amans. But actually, running a shelter requires a lot of responsibility. And I think there has to be special training to the staff who's running these shelters. Like in our shelter, which is a public-private partnership, our staff is fully equipped to handle all cases. They are gender sensitized, they are non-judgmental, there's transparency in the way we run our institution. We provide all kinds of vocational training to them. And so this is just one of a kind shelter. Like Panha is considered one of the most outstanding shelters in the whole of Pakistan. So, but I wish that more shelters would replicate and more shelters would come up, because of course there is a need for shelters to prevent women from being subjected to violence. We need more shelters. And, but what more is needed is a sensitized police force who knows the laws. Like if today we are talking about trafficking, I think we need to sensitize the judiciary and the police at the Thana level, that about these laws. So, because in most cases, like in Sindh, I would say, I mean, I give credit to Pakistan People's Party for bringing in very progressive legislation, and we are the only province which has the Sindh Child Marriage Restraint Act. which sort of that a girl or boy cannot, under 18 cannot get married. But because there is no uniform law, we see that now they have realized that, okay, now they know that somehow this law is now being applied to some extent. So now what is happening is that girls are, like we saw in the Zua Zehra case that came to, that was highlighted, but this happened in previous cases where then the girls are trafficked to other provinces and then they're married off over there. So we have to have a uniform law. Each province has to work towards bringing in better legislation. In Sindh, we have the law on domestic violence also. So all these laws are there on book, but I think we need to implement the laws better. And I think SSDO has done an amazing job. Like in the past, like few years that I've come in contact with them, I've suddenly realized that the issue of trafficking, which was a neglected issue, which was not many people were aware of it. And today with this large gathering that was here, I noticed that so many police officers and prosecution and judges, everybody sitting under one roof, and people who are a part of NGOs and civil society groups. And that is what is needed, a very well effort where we all work together to achieve our objectives. And as shelters, yes, I think I've said it before, I've said it on the SSDO platform also, we need special shelters for traffic victims. We need to come up with some kind of, state-run shelters or private shelters that can address this issue. And after all, it is the state's responsibility to provide protection to its citizens. And that's where the, solution lies, that a state that is more receptive to any forms of violence happening to women. And I think it was mentioned that a large number of women are now coming forward also, but there's one step forward and two steps backward, because the number of cases of violence against women seem to be increasing, and trafficking is one of the issues that was never taken seriously before. But now I hope that with all this awareness, the law on trafficking will be applied, where, I've seen that, especially now in Afghanistan with the fall of, with the takeover of Taliban, and our own country where we are going through, a war-like state where we have religious extremism and different forms of, extremist group operating. So under these circumstances, I think these are breeding grounds for trafficking, where there's a lack of law and order and lack of justice and lack of awareness about laws. So I'll end with that.
Thank you so much. You have already mentioned that we really need more shelters, but why there is no designated shelter? What is the reason that this issue is always being ignored? We are getting aware about that through different organizations, through the number of victims that are increasing day by day, but why? There is no designated shelter. Is there any problem of budget? Is there any problem of security or any problem of long-term planning? What do you think?
I would like to answer this
Yeah,
question.
please, you can.
So practically in Pakistan, we have three types of shelter. One happens to be state-owned shelter, Darul Amans, all over Sindh, we have Darul Amans. Then we have one-stop crisis center.
Okay.
One-stop crisis center is somehow upgradation of already available women police stations. So women police station was upgraded, and it included services from other departments that included women development department, prosecution department, hospital, and women police station was upgraded into one-stop crisis center that had a shelter within its boundaries. And then we have shelters owned by non-government organizations. That includes Panha Shelter Home in Karachi and SOS Shelter for Children and many other shelters, EDI, Chipa, and these kind of shelter homes, but those are owned by non-governmental organizations. And third type of shelter is a makeshift shelter. It's a makeshift arrangement, especially at the places where there are neither state-owned shelters nor privately owned shelters. So the notable of the area, his house is most of the times considered as makeshift shelter. You are right, we need to have more shelters. And the problem like you asked that why we don't have much shelters. No, we have a good number of shelters. We just need to have more shelters in countryside.
All right.
And when it comes about budget or security, so police is everywhere in our country, security is given there. And when it comes to budget, yeah, budgetary issues are everywhere in every department.
All right, thank you so much for shedding light on it. So basically, why we are discussing all such things to the main reason and the main purpose behind such session is to combat trafficking. How we can protect our daughters, how we can protect our children, how we can protect the victims. So I would like to request Ms. Uzma to talk about the measures that need to be taken for combating that, what should be done and what we should do in future, what are the plannings you are, for the combating of trafficking in persons.
Just a couple of points that I thought I should mention. That child marriage is a big phenomena in our society, and it's sort of a social issue. But I think we need to take measures to stop this from happening. We have the law also. So it's important that births should be registered. And when a girl, like in many cases, when girls come to a shelter, they have gone and married, they've gone to some nikah or some registrar who's solemnized the marriage in the nikah. But they should check if the girl is an adult. They should check her birth certificate. They should check if she has a CNIC. And without that, they should not be allowed to solemnize a marriage. We have to punish those people who are doing that. But even in the Dua Zahra case, we saw that they were not punished because they performed the nikah. So it's important, if you want to prevent trafficking, in the sense that child marriages are also a means of trafficking, forced conversions, if they marry of their own choice also, they're lured into this. And another thing that we need to also talk about is making cyberspace, prevent crime from taking place on cyber. We need to have security over there also. So these are some of the areas that we need to talk about. And somebody has mentioned earlier, local bodies elections. I think that is extremely important, because that is where the community can go and report any problem that they incur.
Thank you so much to our distinguished guests for shedding a light towards the importance of role of women leadership in combating trafficking. Now let's move towards a quick question answer session. If any one of you wants to ask any question, please raise your hand. Please, it should be, concise. Yeah.
Question is from AIG Suhai. You told us that there are around 480 cases registered. What's the conviction rate? Second question is, in south of Sindh, there are around 5 districts. So most of the electable are involved in the forced labor and bonded labor. How many cases have been registered against these electables? Electables mean MPA, MNS.
Your first question was about conviction. So 488 cases from March 2022 till 31st December 2022. I don't have the figure of conviction with me right now, but the conviction has improved. And I believe that most of the cases must be under trial because of the pace of with which the cases are run in our system. So I don't have the exact percentage of conviction, but I assure you that the conviction has increased, and especially we have now designated investigation officers for crimes that include vulnerable sections of the society, women and children. So we have designated IOs for those crimes, and by having designated IOs, our investigation has improved. And investigation has improved, that leads to better percentage of conviction. Your second question was about the people who are forced into bonded labor by the people in southern Sindh. This is what you asked?
Yeah, my question was second. In south of Sindh, there are almost 5 districts where electables means MPA, MNS,
Okay.
they are involved in forced or bonded labor. How many cases have been registered against these electables?
Please tell me name of any electable who has forced labor. I'll tell you whether the case has been registered or not.
You have Murray community, you have Rajad community, you have so many, they are involved
So
in
we can
the-
discuss this question on the tree break as well. Yes, please, ma'am, if you want to ask something.
I'll answer you later on, don't worry.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you know of any victim who has turned into a witness for a case to get hold of the traffickers?
There are few cases of that type that have happened that I myself has personally supervised. These cases include most of the times the cases of elopement, 365 BPC, where it was established that the guy who actually befooled the girl and took her along was not the lover as he showed to the girl, but basically it was a racket of a family that used to lure girls into the marriage, and then they used to put them into the forced prostitution business.
Any other question? Last question. Okay, thank you. We have running
Yeah,
short of
yeah,
time,
please,
so
excuse me.
sorry for that. Thank you so much for your patience
Question,
and participation. Yeah,
Point.
yeah, please.
I think we need tailored programs to address this issue because education
Assalamu alaikum.
and awareness is the only way forward, and we need tailored program to create more awareness about it, and especially for
Madam,
the victims
excuse
and their
me,
families.
Actually, my mic was not working. I have a question
Yeah,
from
excuse
left
me.
side, actually left side.
I'm having a question.
I have a question regarding specifically for the kids anti-beggary law. We have no anti-beggary act in Sindh, but we have to be said to lift the kids and you have to keep them in shelter. I'm a child protection officer. If there is no legality, if there is no act, how can I keep these kids into a shelter? Number one. Number two, I have a kid, means that is a victim of trafficking. He was sold by his father. He's in school now. We kept him into a shelter. But the question is that because they are parents, when you contact to the lawyers specifically, they said they are parents. Police gave them warning, and the child is kept into specifically shelters. So why only warnings? I mean to say there is no such implementation, or I'm not the authority to just arrest their parents, number one. Number two, how to act regarding these, specifically the beggars, kids?
First of all, I want to clarify that we do have Anti-Beggary Act. I, being SP Clifton, I've registered so many cases under Anti-Beggary Act. But now the problem has been resolved because under Anti-Beggary Act, there was very lenient punishment. It was warning, and many of the people that we arrested under Anti-Beggary Act, they were allowed by the magistrate to go free the next day when we produced them in the court of the law. But now the problem has resolved because now we have Trafficking in Person Act that can be used by police department. And you asked about the warning. I would say that this is not something that we, being a Sindh police as an organization, propagate or endorse it as an institution. Might be one of the SHOs gave the warning that he shouldn't have given.